Another road trip, another disappointing offensive game. I'm Sam Massad, live from Edberg Olson Hall, where we'll talk about Temple's disappointing performances on the road this season.
And I'm Hayden Bandel at the studio set. We'll look around the American as conference play begins to ramp up, including the preseason favorites falling to an unlikely hero.
The Owls stared down the eye of the Tiger in Memphis this past weekend and left with their first conference loss of the season.
But with a bye week here early, Temple will have some extra time to prepare for its next AAC matchup. The award-winning Inside the Nest starts right now. Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of Inside the Nest. He's Luke Milai, I'm Emily Cochran.
The Owls strolled into Memphis trying to break another long losing streak. Temple had lost 9 straight road conference games coming into the matchup with the Tigers, and now we're in the double digits.
The Owls entered Liberty Bowl Memorial Stadium hoping to snatch their first conference win of the season. On Temple's second drive, communication is key. E.J. Warner connects to Jose Barbone for a 78-yard gain. This was Temple's longest play of the year so far, the longest catch of Barbone's career, and the longest throw of Warner's freshman season. However, Temple comes up empty after going for it on fourth. Moving into the second quarter, Memphis has the ball and Seth Hannigan throws a long pass intended for Javon Ivory, but Elijah Clark breaks it up. Temple now with the ball. Warner hits Adonicus Sanders for 30 yards on his third catch of the day. This play sets the Owls up in field goal range, but this time Camden Price, a transfer from UMiami, puts one through for 47 yards. It's Temple's only points of the day.
The Owls led at the half for the third time this season, but this marked the first time they couldn't hold that lead to the end. Hennigan converts a big fourth down with his legs to begin the second half. He ran for 60 yards on the ground in this game to lead the Tigers in rushing. That fourth down conversion was the only one Memphis converted on Saturday out of their 4 attempts, but it may have been the most important one. Later on in the drive, a few plays later in this third quarter, after the fourth down conversion, Hennigan completes a big third down to Eddie Lewis over the middle to put the Tigers inside the 5-yard line. 3 plays later, Brandon Thomas bowls his way into the end zone to give Memphis its first lead of the afternoon. In the fourth quarter, the Tigers start to pour it on. Hennigan floats a 4-yard touchdown to Cameron Prescorn to extend the lead to 14. With the Owls running out of time, Warner steps back, lofts one into traffic, and it is picked off by Xavier Cullins. Warner ended the day with 245 passing yards, 3 interceptions, and no touchdowns. The Tigers add the finishing touch later in the fourth quarter with a Brandon Thomas touchdown, his second rushing score of the game. The Owls fall 24-3, moving their record to 2-3 overall and 0-1 in conference play. The Owls held Memphis QB Seth Hennigan to under 200 yards, but allowed him to run for his season high in rushing yards. E.J. Warner threw a career-high 37 passes, which resulted in a career-best 245 passing yards in the loss. The Owls running backs continued to struggle. The trio of Jakari Norwood, Darvon Hubbard, and Ed Sadie combined for 40 yards on 14 carries. That's under 3 yards per carry for those of you doing math at home.
Yeah, obviously we have to take a look at things up front. We have to take a look at us as a coaching staff, making sure that we're putting our players in the proper position to make plays in the run game. I just think that that's something that I'll have a better feel for once I assess it on film. But we have got to do a much better job of controlling the ball on offense, whether it be run or pass. There are flashes of things that are really good that's going on right now as a football team that we just need to build on and get more consistent at. But we'll learn and we'll grow. We'll buckle up our chin straps and go back to work, and we'll try to find a way to win the next one for sure.
I wouldn't say they were doing anything different. I think they might have had a little bit of an idea when Quincy's in the game. We might tend to run the ball a little bit more. But at the same fact, like I said, it's just guys getting a body on a body and doing their job up front, because it doesn't matter how well you game plan for somebody. If you do your job on your side of the football, it won't matter what they do.
we felt good going into the second half, but in that fourth quarter, we let up 24 points. We just got to be better as a team, better as a unit. We got places to work everywhere, pass interferences, little things like that. Run game, run fits, pass coverage, just coming together as a team, really fixing everything on Monday. We got to be better as a defense, we let up 24 points in the fourth quarter. We just got to go back on Monday and get better at it.
So it's clear that the offense just really needs to do more. I mean, the wide receivers were dropping passes left and right. The offensive line wasn't protecting E.J. Warner, not giving him enough time in the pocket at all. Not to mention, this offensive line has looked different for 5 straight weeks in a row. Their starters haven't been the same for 5 straight weeks. Not to mention, E.J. Warner also throwing 3 interceptions just within the fourth quarter. If nothing gets going on offense, it's just ultimately going to make the defense's life a lot harder.
And Emily, all those issues that you just mentioned were magnified on third down. The Owls went just 2 for 16 on third down against Memphis. That's just a little over 12%. And this isn't just an issue for the game against Memphis. This is an issue all season. It's quietly been one of Temple's biggest offensive problems. We've talked about how they're top 5 in the country in so many defensive stats. Well, they're actually bottom 5 in the country in third down conversion percentage. You're not going to be able to sustain drives. As you mentioned, that defense is going to be on the field a whole lot more if they can't convert third downs.
I was just going to say the defense can only do so much. Temple only had 7 first downs throughout the entire game. And when you have those short drives with 0 momentum and you're consistently throwing the defense back on the field to do more work and only one side of the ball is really doing something, it just makes their life a lot harder.
You talk about one side of the ball doing something, only one element of the offense has contributed anything this season. The pass game has really been the dimension that Temple succeeded in offensively. The run game's been almost non-existent. Temple's bottom 6 in the country in rushing offense, averaging just under 84 yards on the ground per game. And I mentioned in this game, your trio of running backs combined for just 40 yards. That's not going to get the job done. E.J. Warner shouldn't have to throw 37 passes, a career high in this game. He's good, but you need to be two-dimensional, and you got to get the run game from somewhere. It's okay that E.J. is not a running quarterback, but that just means the running backs and the O-line have to step up in that regard.
Absolutely.
Now we're up against our first break, but we aren't done going over the Memphis game just yet. Up next, we're live at Edberg-Olsen Hall talking more about the offensive woes.
I'm Inside the Nest reporter Sam Massad. When we come back, I'll take you into the Owls' struggles away from the Lincoln Financial Field. Inside the Nest will be right back.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. The loss to Memphis makes it 8 straight losses in conference play for Temple. The last win came back on October 2nd of 2021 against these Tigers.
Now Sam Massad is live outside Edberg-Olsen Hall to tell us more about this Temple offense struggling on the road. Hey Sam.
Hey guys, yes, the defense has been looking elite these past couple games, but we can't say the same about the offense, specifically when they're away. Without that home atmosphere, Temple struggles to get the ball moving, having 9 penalties against Memphis, which is the most they've had in a single game this season.
Overall commitment to each other in the locker room.
It's been over a year since the Owls have won on the road. For 3 quarters on Saturday versus Memphis, that streak was in doubt. But Temple's youth showed in the final 15 minutes with offensive struggles. The offense has been outscored on the road 54-3 this season alone. That puts pressure on a defensive unit that's been very good, but not perfect.
I think our defense played lights out for about 2.5, probably full 3 quarters, and they're playing 89 plays compared to whatever 50 some odd plays on offense.
But the defense can only do so much. With a true freshman behind center, there is only so much you can ask of the offense. It's a group that hasn't found rhythm moving down the field.
This was also E.J. Warner's first game on the road as a starting QB with the Owls. However, he only completed half of his passes, threw for 245 yards, and had 3 interceptions, leading to no points for the Owls.
I think there's just some plays here and there that could have gone the other way, but for the most part, it's our job up front to make sure EJ has time, make sure we open up holes up front for the running game. We all got to get our bodies right. It's the bye week of the season, so we got to get our bodies right. We got to keep our minds right. We're still just beginning conference play, so it's still a mindset that we have to get the job done week by week.
Going into the bye week, the Owls will take advantage of the time off in order to improve offensively and prepare themselves for the next game, again on the road at UCF.
Taking a look into Temple's offensive stats, the team sits towards the bottom of the conference in all the main categories. The Owls are averaging only 15 points per game, ranking 10th. It doesn't get any better when it comes to yards per game and rushing yards per game, both at the bottom of the AAC. With the extra week of practice, the Owls will have a chance to fix these mistakes, establish that run game, fix the offensive line, and find that momentum moving down the field in hopes to compete with the Knights on the 13th for a Thursday night showdown. On the road, of course. Live from Edberg Olson, I'm Sam Massad. Luke and Emily, back to you.
Thank you, Sam. Now, the Owls lost by 3 scores this past weekend, but there were some key fourth quarter plays that ballooned the Memphis lead and put the game out of reach.
Now let's take a look at this one. Here we see Memphis fake the run and execute a perfect play action pass to score another Memphis touchdown. Now, if we take a look at this again and we stop it right here, you can see Temple is stacking the box here, so they're ultimately preparing for Memphis to run the ball. And if you play it again, this is clearly not the case. Seth Hennigan throws a 4-yarder right into the end zone to put these Tigers up 17-3 in the fourth quarter.
And that was a big play in this game, ultimately putting this game out of reach with the offense struggling. Let's go back a few plays earlier in this drive. 8:26 to go in the fourth. You can run it right here. It's third down for Memphis. The Temple defense trying to get the offense back on the field, give them one more shot. Hennigan's throw is incomplete. They did the job, but a late flag comes in on Cameron Ruiz for pass interference. And this was a tough play for Memphis all around. You see Jordan McGee do a nice job getting in and applying the pressure on Hennigan. Ruiz was right with the receiver the whole way. The ball's over his head, and that flag came in a little bit late. It was a big call in this game. Ultimately, the 15-yard penalty advanced the Memphis drive to where we saw Emily's touchdown. Not everybody was happy about this play. Defensive coordinator DJ Elliott certainly let the referees know that himself. And it was a big play. I mean, you can understand his frustration here on the replay. You see the hand of Ruiz is on the receiver, but I don't think it was enough to throw him to the ground like that. I think that's a missed call. That was a turning point in this game that ultimately put Memphis in the driver's seat. Now, while the Owls and the Tigers were dueling it out this past weekend, the rest of the AAC also sprung into some conference play.
There were some tight games, including an upset of Houston, the team projected to finish at the top of the conference. Inside the Nest reporter Hayden Bandel tells us more. Hi, Hayden.
Hey, Emily. That's right. Tulane won its first conference matchup against the Cougars, but it did not go as planned. Injuries had third-string quarterback Kai Horton lead the charge, and boy did he deliver, sending the Green Wave to a 27-24 overtime victory. Navy has not beat Air Force on the road since 2012, and that streak continued as the Falcons won 13-10. The Bearcats started up their AAC title defense with a 31-21 win over Tulsa, putting Cincy back in the top 25. Holton Ahlers helped ECU cruise by USF 48-28, throwing a season-high 465 yards and matching a career high with six passing touchdowns. The game was moved to FAU Stadium due to the anticipated impacts of Hurricane Ian. UCF's game against SMU has already been rescheduled twice due to the hurricane and is now set to play Wednesday. Reporting from the studio set, I'm Hayden Bandel. Luke and Emily, back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Hayden. We're up against our second break of the day. But when we come back, we'll go no huddle, and we'll break down Temple's season up to this point.
Plus, we bring in a Temple expert to talk about the 2022 season thus far and expectations leading into UCF. Inside the Nest is back right after this.
Welcome back to Inside the Nest. Now, we've got no game to preview this week, so we're working up against a tighter clock than usual.
Now it's time to go no huddle, and this time we've got a timer to make sure we can handle the pressure.
Now let's start with the man in charge. Stan Drayton is 5 games into his first season as a head coach with Temple. How would you evaluate him so far?
I think Stan Drayton has done so much for this team so far. The players respect him on a whole different level than when Rod Carey was head coach. This is the type of team that wants to play well for its coach, and it shows when they look disappointed after a hard loss or when they're celebrating during a win.
He's done a great job changing the culture of this team. And I loved when he talked about having a committee of players that convey messages between the players and the coaching staff. It shows that they've got that camaraderie and he trusts them. He also respects his coordinators, telling us stories about him and DJ Elliott's relationship earlier in the season. And on the field, he's won the games they were favored in, and they've lost the games they were underdogs in. That's all I can ask from a rebuilding team.
Was that the timer? Was that what? Question 2, is this bye week coming at a good time for Temple, Luke?
I'm going to say no because I'm looking at this from a defensive perspective. I mentioned earlier this defense didn't allow a touchdown for 11 consecutive quarters. That's almost 3 full games of football. They're playing as dominant as a defense can play, and I fear that a bye week could take them out of their rhythm, hence that rust.
I'm going to have to disagree, Luke. I think Temple's bye week comes at a reasonable time. This is a perfect chance for the Owls to reset and recover from the first half of their season. Temple's O-line has also been very inconsistent, as I mentioned earlier. The bye week will give them more time to move things around and secure their line for UCF. Now you know the drill. Here are our score predictions from last week. Luke, Jake, and Sam are tied up for the 5th week in a row, and my record sits at 4-1.
Now we don't have any game to predict this week, so Jake, Sam, and myself will hold that lead on Emily for at least one more week.
All right, it's time to bring it around broad. We still have to bring it around broad, even though we don't have a game prediction. So here is a question. What will the Owls need to focus on most during practice this week, Luke?
Now, the Owls need to use this week to shore up the protection in front of E.J. Warner. Emily, you mentioned it earlier. He started 3 games. He's had a different offensive line combination in all 3 of those games, including this past week. Adam Klein moving back from center to right tackle, with Richard Rodriguez moving back at center. So I know Stan Drayton mentioned that some guys were sick a couple of weeks ago, and that prompted the initial change. So hopefully these Temple guys can stay healthy through the bye week and get a consistent combination going forward.
Absolutely, and I'm sticking with the offense. I know keeping pressure off Warner is key, but these wide receivers need to do a better job at opening their hands. When it's time to be in the pocket and with zero pressure, E.J. Warner is accurate. The receivers need to trust him, communicate better, and know the playbook better, especially Dwan Mathis, who is learning the position on the job.
So far this season, the run game has been non-existent and the team relies heavily on passing. Coach Drayton hasn't seemed to have found his go-to guy yet, as he's constantly switching between Darvon Hubbard, Ed Sadie, or Jakari Norwood. I think the Owls O-line needs to help this week and take it to help in order to establish that run game this week.
My answer applies to both sides of the ball. Penalties. They need to be cut down. Temple had 9 penalties for 74 yards against Memphis. The Tigers only had 1 penalty for 5 yards. This is the kind of stuff that makes coaches pull their hair out. It is already hard enough to try to beat other teams, but when Temple beats themselves because of mistakes resulting in penalties, it becomes even harder to win.
All right, our no-huddle answers are locked in, but what's the harm in getting an extra opinion? Next up, we hear from John DiCarlo, the Managing Director of Student Media here at Klein College and a lead editor for OwlScoop.com. After years of covering the Owls, he'll bring his own Temple football knowledge to TV Studio 3.
We'll hear from John and our very own Jake Gable again coming up after the break. We'll also check out one episode of Inside the Nest that received some well-deserved recognition over the weekend. I'm just here watching. Welcome back to Inside the Nest. You've heard Emily and my thoughts on the Owls this season, so we're bringing on one new voice and one familiar voice to hear things from their perspective through the first 5 games.
We now welcome in OwlScoop.com editor John DiCarlo along with Inside the Nest beat reporter Jake Gable to tell us more about this Temple team. Hey guys.
How are you doing? So John, I'm going to start with you. Through 5 games this season, what's one of the biggest surprises you've seen for this Temple team?
Probably, I mean, it's the easy answer, but probably E.J. Warner. I thought he would play this year. I didn't know that he would be starting at this juncture. I thought Dwan Mathis would be a little bit better. I think if the coaches had the chance to have Dwan develop a little bit more and maybe redshirt EJ, and you can play him a little bit and still preserve his redshirt, but I think it shows you that a new staff is only going to be so loyal to previous players, and if they put a premium on not turning the ball over, I think it was a combination of that. And I think when you're covering a new staff and you're covering a new coach, it's important to hear what they're saying and how they're saying it too. They kept praising him and saying he hits his spots with the ball, he's decisive, he reads coverage as well, and all that stuff. He's far from a finished product, but a lot of that has proven to be true, and I think they decided to pull the trigger on it. And a lot has to go better around him, along with his own development, but I think that would probably be the biggest surprise so far.
Now, Jake, what has been the position group that has stood out to you the most so far this season?
I'm going to have to go with the linebackers. I mean, the Temple defense as a whole has been great, but the linebackers are the heart of that unit. The defense is tied 3rd in the nation in sacks, and the linebackers make up a majority of those sacks. The 2 Jordans, Leighton Jordan and Jordan McGee, have 4.5 and 3 sacks each. And this Temple team only had 15 sacks all of last season. They already have 20 this year, so they're not only good this year, but have already improved from last season.
Now this last one's for both of you. We're going to go back to that QB situation a little bit. We've seen 3 guys come under center. Obviously, EJ has started the last 3 games. John, I'll start with you. Is there any reason to think that there's going to be another change going forward? Or from what you've seen from EJ and what you've heard from Stan, do you think it's going to stay the same?
I think it would stay the same. I think the future of the program moving forward is EJ Warner and a player that they have committed, verbally committed, Tyler Douglas at Ocean Township, where Kenny Pickett went to high school. But I don't think if he gets hurt, not that I want that to happen, then maybe they go back to Dewan. Dewan's having his own struggles at wide receiver. That was a turning point in the game. He lined up wrong. That fans thought it was a phantom ineligible receiver call. He lined up wrong, covered up Jose Barbone. That was a big turning point in the game. There was the miscommunication before that, but I don't think that they've seen enough from him. I don't think they've seen enough from Quincy Patterson as a thrower. We'll see, but I think it would stay with EJ throughout the way.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I mean, if you go to other options, you have Quincy Patterson, who's mainly been used as a gadget guy, and he hasn't been really shown by Stan Drayton to be a guy you start and play the entire game. And then, like you mentioned, John, Dewan Mathis is playing wide receiver right now, so I think you have to stay with Warner right now if you want to win games.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
And of course, you can catch John DeCarlo's coverage all over owlscoop.com. And of course, Jake Gable is here with us every Tuesday on ITN.
Now, before we go, it's not really our job to pat ourselves on the back, but we can't let this one go without the TV version of a high five. We have to mention Owl Sports Update Productions had some success at the Mid-Atlantic Emmys this past weekend. Emily and the rest of the 2021 Inside the Nest crew received a Student Production Award under the category Best Student Newscast. Last year it was Ray Dunn and Jackson Neal here as your hosts, with Will Mead, Jake Jessberger, and Sarah Casella as our producers.
Plus, this guy right next to me won a Student Production Award for Best. You heard me, Best Talent. Who's to say we can't do it all over again next year? But for now, here's a look at some memories we made over the eventful weekend.
We hope to have more award-winning content next year, and that'll come from our weekly slate of shows. On Thursday at noon, Eric Jessberger and Matt Grenier will be back at the desk for Owl Sports Update. The Sports Brief continues on Monday on our socials at Owl Sports Update, and Inside the Nest returns at Tuesday at noon. Now, Emily, what is your plan for the bye week? We don't have any game to watch this weekend. You don't have any game to cheer at. What are you going to do this weekend? I'm planning on sitting home on my couch and doing absolutely nothing. This is the 1 week where I don't have to do anything, so that's where I will be. What about you? I'm really happy for you. I'm going to go home as well. I'm going to try and get back to Ocean City where I live. It's currently flooded thanks to all the rain, but we're going to hope this rain goes away for my sake, and then for a couple weeks from now, the Owls' sake, when they have to head down to UCF, and you'll be heading there as well. Yes, I will. Is that the first road game that you've traveled to, that you're going to be traveled to? It is. It's the first very long away road game that we can travel to. That's really exciting. First time Temple Cheer will be in Florida. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Nest. Once again, there's no game this weekend, so we'll be back next Tuesday looking ahead to Temple's matchup with UCF. So for our entire crew, he's Luke Milai, I'm Emily Cochran. Have a lovely day, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.